The divorce papers were signed on a Friday. By the following Tuesday, Claire had married her divorce attorney, Richard Steinberg. 3 days. That's how long it took for my ex-wife to go from devastated victim of a failed marriage to blushing bride walking down the aisle of some downtown chapel. I heard about it through my own lawyer, Jim, who called me at the construction site where I was trying to rebuild my life one brick at a time. "David, you sitting down?" Jim's voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to deliver news that's going to hit like a freight train. "I'm on a ladder. What's up?" "Claire married Steinberg yesterday. Small ceremony, but it's all over social media." I nearly dropped my hammer, not because I was heartbroken. That ship had sailed months ago when Claire decided our 12-year marriage was worth trading for a chance at something more exciting, but because the timing made everything suddenly, sickeningly clear. 3 days after the settlement was finalized, I said, "Yeah." Claire had walked away with $2, $1 million, half our house, and my retirement savings. Steinberg had been ruthless during negotiations, painting me as a controlling husband who'd stifled Claire's potential. He'd convinced the judge that Claire deserved compensation for lost opportunities and emotional damage. Now she was Mrs. Richard Steinberg, and her fairy tale was just beginning. Or so she thought. That evening, I sat in my new apartment, the one-bedroom place I could afford after Claire took everything, and tried to make sense of it. Richard Steinberg was 53 years old, twice divorced, and known around legal circles as a shark who specialized in high-asset divorces. His fees were legendary. A man like that doesn't work for charity. But he'd represented Claire for a fraction of his usual rate, claiming he believed in her case. He'd been passionate about her cause, working late nights to build arguments that would maximize her settlement. Now I understood why. He hadn't been working for Claire's future. He'd been working for his own. The question was, did Claire know she'd been played, or was she still living in the fantasy that Richard Steinberg had fallen for her charm and not her bank account? I had a feeling I was about to find out. For 3 months, Claire's social media was a highlight reel of marital bliss. Photos from Cabo, dinner at 5-star restaurants, shopping trips that could fund a small business. She looked radiant, posting captions about finding true love and finally being appreciated. Richard played his part perfectly. Flowers delivered to her office, weekend getaways to wine country, public displays of affection that looked genuine enough to fool anyone who didn't know his history. But I knew his history. After Claire posted a photo of them at some charity gala, I did what any reasonable ex-husband would do. I Googled the man who'd helped destroy my marriage and was now spending my retirement fund on champagne. Richard Steinberg had been married twice before, both times to wealthy women. Both marriages had ended in divorce within 2 years, with Richard walking away significantly richer than when he'd arrived. His first wife, Margaret, had been a real estate heiress. His second, Patricia, had owned a chain of boutique hotels. The pattern was clear. Richard didn't fall in love with women. He fell in love with their assets. I started keeping track, not out of spite, but out of curiosity. How long would it take Claire to realize she'd married the fox who'd helped her raid the henhouse, only to discover she was now the chicken? The answer came sooner than I expected. 4 months into the marriage, Claire's posts became less frequent. The vacation photos stopped. Instead of gushing about her perfect husband, she started posting vague quotes about staying strong and learning who people really are. Then came the post that told me everything I needed to know, a photo of Claire alone at a coffee shop, looking tired, with a caption that read, "Sometimes the person who helps you win isn't always on your team. #learning and growing #stronger than before." She'd figured it out. Richard had shown his true colors, and Claire was learning what it felt like to be on the receiving end of a predator's attention. Part of me felt sorry for her. The larger part remembered how she'd sat in that courtroom, nodding along as Richard painted me as a monster who deserved to lose everything I'd worked for. Sometimes karma doesn't just knock on your door. Sometimes it marries you. The first sign that Claire's fairy tale was crumbling came in the form of a phone call from her sister Jenny. We'd always gotten along, and she'd never agreed with Claire's decision to divorce me. "David, I need to ask you something, and please don't take this the wrong way." "Shoot." "During the divorce, did you ever suspect that Richard and Claire were involved before the proceedings started?" I set down my coffee cup. "What are you getting at, Jenny?" "Claire's been asking me about proving adultery in divorce cases, specifically, whether evidence of an affair that started before marriage could affect a settlement." The pieces clicked into place like a lock opening. She thinks Richard was planning this from the beginning. She knows he was. David, he's been treating her like his personal bank account. Expensive purchases charged to her credit cards. Business investments using her settlement money. She tried to access her accounts last week and found out he'd moved most of her funds to investments she can't touch without his signature. I felt something I hadn't expected, concern for Claire. Not love, that was gone, but basic human sympathy for someone who'd been systematically manipulated. Has she talked to a lawyer? That's the problem. Richard's made sure she can't afford one. He's isolated her from most of her friends, convinced her to quit her job because wives of successful men don't need to work, and now she's dependent on him for everything. It was textbook predator behavior, the same tactics abusers use, just wrapped in expensive suits and legal expertise. Jenny, tell Claire to call me. David, I don't think she will. She's ashamed. She knows she made a mistake, but admitting it means admitting she destroyed your marriage for a lie. But Claire did call. 3 days later, her voice small and different from the confident woman who'd sat across from me in divorce proceedings. David, I need to ask you something. I'm listening. During our marriage, did you ever try to control my finances? The question hung in the air. Claire was comparing Richard's behavior to mine, trying to understand the difference between partnership and manipulation. No, Claire, we made financial decisions together. That's what partners do. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. I made a terrible mistake. Yeah, I said. You did. Claire filed for divorce from Richard 6 months after their wedding, but Richard Steinberg didn't become a successful divorce attorney by being easy to divorce. He fought dirty, using every tactic he'd perfected on other men's wives over the years. The difference was, Claire didn't have $2, $1 million anymore. She had whatever Richard hadn't already spent or hidden, and Richard knew exactly how to make divorce proceedings as expensive and drawn out as possible. I followed the case from a distance, not out of vindictiveness, but because watching a master manipulator get outmaneuvered by his own game was like watching justice in real time. Richard had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated Claire's determination once she realized she'd been played. She might have been naive about his motives, but she wasn't stupid. She started documenting everything: bank statements, credit card records, evidence of Richard using her settlement money for personal investments. The breakthrough came when Claire discovered Richard had done this before. She hired a private investigator, using the last of her liquid assets, who uncovered a pattern going back 20 years. Richard had been marrying wealthy divorcees, helping them win big settlements, then systematically draining their resources before discarding them. Claire's case became a criminal matter when prosecutors realized Richard had been committing fraud on a massive scale. The FBI raid on Richard's office made local news. Boxes of evidence carried out, client files seized. Richard Steinberg, the shark who'd made a career of destroying marriages for profit, walked out in handcuffs. Claire called me the day Richard was arrested. I wanted you to hear it from me, she said. They think I might get some of the money back. Not all of it, but some. That's good, Claire. David, I owe you an apology, a real one, not just for the divorce, but for believing his lies about you, for thinking you were the enemy when you were the only honest person in my life. I'd waited 2 years to hear those words. Now that they'd come, they felt less important than I'd expected. We both made mistakes, I said finally. No, I made mistakes. You tried to hold our marriage together while I was planning to tear it apart. 6 months later, Claire moved back to town, not to win me back. We both knew that bridge had burned completely, but to start over somewhere familiar. Richard got 15 years for fraud and racketeering. Claire recovered about 40% of her settlement money. We see each other occasionally at the grocery store or gas station. We're cordial, sometimes even friendly. She's working as a bookkeeper now, living in a small apartment, learning what it means to rebuild from nothing. Sometimes I think about the irony of it all. Claire had wanted excitement, passion, someone who would sweep her off her feet and give her the life she thought she deserved. She got exactly that. What she didn't understand was that the person who sweeps you off your feet might just be looking for the best angle to drop you. The real tragedy wasn't our divorce. It was that Claire had to learn the difference between love and manipulation by experiencing both. Some lessons can only be taught by living through them. But at least she learned. Some people never do. Richard Steinberg built a career on the belief that everyone has a price and everything can be taken with the right legal strategy. In the end, the only thing he couldn't lawyer his way out of was the truth. And the truth, as they say, will set you free. Even if it costs you everything else first.